Morning, Gateway. I trust you're all doing well, and just using the time that you're at home to, I guess, finish the tasks and just to model or remodel how the way you do life. I think one of the key things that we need to take away from here, I'd like to say, is that we need to look at the way we do life, the way we spend our time, and is it fruitful? And is there fruit, not only just about fruit in terms of work, but what are we doing spiritually? This is a fantastic time to create new spiritual habits and new ways to encounter God and spend time with God. I personally I'm rereading this book. It is called The Practice of the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence. Brother Lawrence was a 17th century monk. And you wonder, what can a monk teach us? And I want to say to you that this man was known in his time as somebody who really stood in the presence of God, almost like a Samuel, and people from all over Europe came to understand how he spent time with God, how he practiced the presence of God in his life. And in his first 15 years of religious life, he was in the kitchen. He cooked and he washed dishes. That's all he did. And it was in that time, rather than becoming frustrated, that he set time aside to encounter God. And there's a couple of things that I want to read to you and just leave it with you for you to ponder on. He says this. He says, let me begin with this. The most excellent method he found of going to God was that of doing our common business purely for the love of God. In other words, every aspect of life there was a focus of God in what he did. He goes and says, there's a great delusion to think that the times of prayer ought to differ from other times, that we are strictly obliged to adhere to God by action in the time of action as by prayer in the season of prayer. So what he's saying is, that there should be no difference. The time that we spend in prayer to God is not a time. It's not a limited time, and then we do 8 o'clock to 8:15. That's a prayer time, and then we forget about God the rest of the time. That there should be no difference in how we spend time with God, seeking God during a prayer time, and the way we do it at other times. He says that prayer was nothing else but a sense of the presence of God, his soul being at that time insensible to everything but the divine love of God. And then he continues, when the appointed times of prayer were past, he found no difference, because he still continued with God, praising and blessing him with all his might, so that he passed his life in continual joy. And I think that is a key thing that we need to practice. That is a key time in terms of pursuing God's heart. That we mustn't make the mistake of thinking, this is my time for God, this is my time for something else. But that the pursuit of the presence of God during a prayer time should be no different to a pursuit of God during every other time. So in a sense, there's no separation between the sacred and the secular. That God needs to be the center focus of everything that we do. He says we ought to once for all heartily put all our trust in God and make a total surrender of ourselves to him. And he continues, says we ought not to be weary of doing little things for the love of God, who regards not the greatness of the work, but the love with which it is performed. And I think that is important. How are we doing? How are we interacting with our wives, with our children, with our husbands, with work? And all of it, is it covered? Is there a covering of love? 1 Corinthians 13. And above all, does it reflect who God is? He says, the whole substance of religion is faith, hope, and charity, or love, by the practice with which we will become united with the will of God. He says that all things are possible to him who believes. Listen to this. All things are possible to him who believes, that they are less difficult to him who hopes, that they're more easy for him who loves, and still more easy to him who perseveres in the practice of these virtues. That the end we ought to propose to ourselves is to become in this life the most perfect worshippers of God that we possibly can be, as we hope to be throughout all eternity. That's a challenge. How do we encounter the presence of God? How do we keep the presence of God in every aspect of our lives? And so there has to be a shift, I would say, of what we think is God time and what we think is our time. How we redeem the time. And I want to say to you that My time is God's time. Prayer time is God's time. Being in the kitchen is God's time. Being at work is God's time. Driving is God's time. And so how do we usher in, and how do we make place, and how do we make space for the presence of God? And so the challenge I want to leave with you, church, is that in this next week or 2 weeks that we might still be at home, use it wisely, use it well, and cultivate. Use part of that time, actually all the time, to cultivate the presence of God in your life and through your life. This is a beautiful time to become richer in understanding God, knowing God, richer in terms of our transformation, and richer in our loving God. Something, words to live by, something to think about, and something to act. Bless you.